Hi, this is Heather Noel, creator of The Giving Game. Today's lesson is Soulful Surrender. My experience of surrender has been in moments where I was genuinely frightened and I didn't know what to do, and I finally had to let go of my idea that I could figure it out. And one of the times this happened was when I had written a book called Children of Light. It was a spiritual fantasy adventure that I had written for teenagers, and I believed in it so much that I went to a class, a week-long workshop with no money and absolutely no ability to even spend the night at the hotel. So it was like this $3,500 class. And I had such a belief in what I was doing that I thought I will just show up and someone is going to see my vision and they're going to get behind me. So I ended up flying from Salt Lake City to LA. I took a shuttle to the Hilton in Long Beach, and I had $20 in my pocket, and that was it. I had no money to get back. I had no idea what was going to happen to me. I had nothing but my vision. I go in and there's all these people who are part of the workshop. They're all over the place. Can't miss them. And someone comes right up to me. Oh, are you part of this group? And I'm like, no, but I would love to be. And they're like, well, what's your project? And I tell them about my book. And the next thing I know, a woman who is in charge comes up to me and she says, well, I hear about your project, and that's all very well and good, but you can't be a part of this class. It's already started and there's no way that you can get in at this point. And I've heard your story that you have $20, and so you need to know that you cannot stay with any of our students, and if you're caught in the lobby sleeping, of course the police will pick you up and take you out. So okay, my balloon was a little deflated on that moment, and she didn't even want to know about my book. So I go upstairs to the hotel pool, and it was outdoors, and I sat outside, and I was listening to a song called You're Not Alone, and it was all about God's presence and how you're loved and you're not alone. And I started bawling. And I go in the bathroom, and I get a whole roll of toilet paper, and I sat by the pool and I cried and cried and cried until finally the sun began to set and there were no tears left. And I thought to myself, well, if I was somewhere in the Middle East in a prison and I was shackled, wouldn't I be feeling really free right now, sitting here at the swimming pool at the Hilton? I mean, wouldn't this feel like I'm no longer a prisoner? And suddenly, I just felt that feeling of surrender, like, okay, there's nothing I could do about this. It's better than being in prison in the Middle East, and it is what it is. So I go into the hotel restaurant, and I traded a psychic reading with the waiter for a bowl of soup. And then I went and sat in the lobby right outside of the restaurant and started playing the piano. And I just sat there feeling God's presence. Like, I just felt this complete, like, I get it, that I have no idea what to do. I don't have the answers. All I know is that you're going to have to take care of me, and that's all there is to it. So I'm playing the piano, and a man comes up to me, and he says, where's your tip jar? And I said, oh, I don't work here. I'm just playing the piano. He says, oh, well, come join my friend and I. So I go and join them, and they offer to buy me a drink, and we're chit-chatting the way people do, and so what are you doing, and why are you here, and so on and so forth. And when the conversation turns to me and I tell them what I've done, they both sat there with their mouths open, staring at me. And this man, his name was John Propati, I told him, I said, well, I took this class called Life Spring, and they taught us to do something called a stretch, which is where you do something outside of your comfort zone. And I said, so, coming here with $20 in my pocket was just a stretch. and he started to laugh because he had done a similar type of class when he was in Hawaii. And he said to me, he said, I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to know I'm here on business. I have 2 beds. You will be perfectly safe. Everything is on an expense account. And I just want you to know that you have this place if you need it, if you want it. And I said, yes, please. That would be awesome. We get up to the room and he says, okay, we're going to have our first argument. Everything is on an expense account. So I'm buying your meals. And then he said, you can stay here. You can meet these people at the conference. You've got a place to stay. I'm not part of the conference, so it's perfectly fine for you to stay here. And he said, when you're ready to go home, I'm buying your plane ticket. And to this day, John Propati and I are still friends. So that's exactly what happened. He bought me a plane ticket home. So when I returned, I told this story to a friend of mine who was a chiropractor. And I had recorded my book, and so he started listening to it, and he loved it, and he said, all right, here's what I'd like to do for you. I will pay for you to have this mass-produced, and then when the next conference comes up, I will pay round trip for you to fly to LA and back, but I can't afford to put you in the class because it was $3,500. And I said, okay. So I just went with it. So I had Children of Light produced on tape. And 6 weeks later, I went back to the class again. Now this time I had a round trip ticket, so I felt pretty good about that. I had $5 in my pocket, but I did have a plane ticket back, so I wasn't too worried about that. I got there the night before the class was to start. And the first thing I did was I went up to the pool. I put on that recording, You're Not Alone, and I cried for an hour and a half. And I just thought, I'm going to get this out of my system right away. I went downstairs. I sat down with my tape player and the headset, the Sony Walkman thing. And I just said in my mind, I know I'm meant to be here. And you're going to have to take care of this, Spirit. I have done everything I can do to bring this message into the world, and it's up to you. A man came and sat down next to me on the couch, and he said, what's your project? And I told him about my project, and I told him that I wasn't actually in the class, that I didn't have the money for the class, but I was just there. And he put on the headset, listened to the first 5 minutes of Children of Light, and then he said to me, you really need to be in this class. He found someone who could sign me up, wrote a check, and paid for it on the spot. The payment that he made paid for the class and the hotel and all my food. And of course, I had my plane ticket home at the end of the week. From there, someone shared the tapes with a man named Enrico Melson, who at the time was the head physician for Deepak Chopra. He heard the tape of Children of Light and he said, I love this story. I'd like to write the foreword and I'll get you Deepak's endorsement. So what I'd like to share about surrender is it's always moving you to the next level. For me, every time that I have surrendered, I've gone deeply into my fear, into my sadness, into loneliness, into the feeling that I'm unsupported, all that. And I've been willing to let it go because there was nothing else to do but let it go. And this is why you can't make a mistake. It would have been really easy for someone to look at me and say, well, that was a big mistake. You should never have gone to Los Angeles with a one-way plane ticket, $20 in your pocket. What's going to happen? You should never do things like that. When in fact, it was a complete opening for one miraculous thing after another. You see, when you don't try to do something about your problem, the universe will step in and handle it. And it will be handled in the most amazing way if you just stay open. So there's a really big difference between going into fear and trying to fearfully do something about your situation, or to be in a place of complete openness and surrender and allowing whatever is going to happen and then being in a state of faith and trust that something's going to work out, and it will work out in your benefit every time without exception, whether you know it in the moment or not. Now, what's interesting about surrender is that it opens a doorway to receiving. As you can see from my story, by completely letting go and knowing that there was nothing I could do, I just let go. Now, certainly I had friends, I had people that if I'd really needed their help and wanted to pick up the phone and ask for help, I could have done that. But I chose to go into the state of surrender and sit with how I was feeling. And by being present and staying with my feelings until I didn't feel them anymore. In other words, I was in a state of extreme fear and extreme loss, and the feeling that, wow, I'm unnoticed and nobody knows what I've got to offer and nobody sees me, and whatever that was. And yet what was happening was an opening for all these wonderful things to happen. But it all began with me asking for help. Having that thought of, I don't know what to do. I'm open to being helped because I do not know. I had to give up on the idea that I could control anything. And by being in that circumstance where I could do nothing but surrender, it also caused me to be completely present in the moment, knowing that there was nothing I could do. So often we want to look at something that's very uncomfortable and do something about it. So the trick is to do nothing. Just stay present with how you feel and let yourself fall apart. That's where the openness comes. The other thing is to be kind to yourself. I felt such compassion for myself in the midst of all of that. I felt this softening toward myself, and I just let it be okay that I was having a complete meltdown in a public place. I had no choice. There was nothing else I could do but just sit there and cry my eyes out. And in the spaciousness that was created from all that release, what came from that was this feeling of love filling me up, the feeling that all was well, that I was fine, that I was surrounded with love. Because as the fear was finally completely released, that's all that's in this moment. Really and truly, all that is in this moment is love. And all I was doing in that moment of soulful surrender, which took 2.5 hours, was letting go of all the fear, letting it move through me, breathing it out, crying it out, and then I was just left with this open space where I was present, where I could feel love's presence. And I didn't go looking for anything. Everything that needed to come to me came. The state of surrender allows you to receive everything you need.